Last August, I designed a massive ecosystem pond, and with the help of my friends at Aquascape through endless waves of rain, it became a reality. That was quite the process. We excavated the ground with machinery and by hand. Then we lined the hole with a geotextile fabric, EPDM liner, and more geotextile. The rocks arrived shortly after. We stacked them within the hole, created a retaining wall, and added other elements like driftwood. Of course, that was the abridged version. There was much more than that, but eventually it all came together, the result being a large pond. It has an intake bay, a wetland bog filter, and many waterfalls with pooling areas. Once complete, I did a little bit of landscaping as well, but not much. This is where we left off in the original video. Since then, it's evolved to new heights. It's harboring an array of incredible animals, plants established, and so much more that I couldn't have imagined. Let's not get ahead of ourselves though. The initial phase of the project wasn't completed because of all the setbacks the rain caused, and things were muddy, both inside and outside of the pond. I mean a lot of mud. It rained so much in fact that the final details like this mound of dirt from the excavation couldn't be addressed until it all dried up. Once it did a few weeks later, the boys at Aquatic Edge pulled up to even that out, framing the left side with more stones, roughed in some seating areas, and the flagstone path. There was a lot more I'd have to address later on by myself, but that wouldn't happen until the following season. In the meantime, frogs moved in immediately and enjoyed the pond. Frogs are my favorite, so this brought me joy, but the whole reason I built the pond was for my goldfish. Common and comet goldfish varieties are one of my favorites, which is why I went all out for this one. I purchased most of them for only cents a piece from one of those wretched feeder fish tanks, while I sought out the shubunkins separately. These are the fish that lived in the old DIY pond, and the first ones that entered this one. I've even had many of these for over 10 years. Also, do you remember Petey? When I built that old pond, it held water hyacinth. I pulled some of that to put in the 350-gallon paludarium, but there must have been eggs in the roots because a few baby fish emerged. However, only one survived. That was Petey. It was a joy having Petey indoors for a year, but I knew he belonged outside with the other fish. He has grown significantly since, and here he is 3 years later. But that's not all. I also adopted a different group from a home that no longer wanted them. I gave some to my mom for her pond and kept the others for myself. Anyway, I netted up both groups and temperature acclimated them. Then came the release. I can't explain just how satisfying it was to watch them slowly make their way into what's likely one of the most elaborate goldfish ponds ever. They swam for a bit, clearly enjoying their new home. Although this continued for a few weeks, winter was on the horizon, so it wouldn't last for long. The time came for them to retreat to the bottom, where they would rest for the foreseeable future. Months later, the pond lay dormant, frozen in time, literally. Leaves are suspended in the ice, as was much of the pond itself. However, looks can be deceiving because the water was still running. One of the questions I get most about the ponds is how they work in the winter. The answer is simple. If they're set up properly, nothing. The basin for this pond is about 5.5 feet deep, which is well below the frost line. So although the top is frozen, the bottom is not. And just to be clear, you don't need to go even nearly that deep to pull it off. Usually it's about 18 inches or more. Meanwhile, the waterfalls continue as usual beneath a thin layer of ice. The flow ensures the environment remains highly oxygenated for the fish as they patiently await warmer days. Although not inhabited by fish and kind of unrelated, the same was true for my fountain. I had to show this because I thought it looked incredible. The display at night was pretty intriguing too. Portals emerged from under several inches of ice as snow fell from the skies above. These ephemeral sculptures and landscapes wouldn't last forever though. Slowly but surely the days got warmer and more hospitable for life. As spring descended upon the land, a very distinct call began sounding each and every morning. It belongs to the resident eastern phoebes who have returned to their nesting grounds. I made sure to leave their nest from last year because they often reuse them. However, the new vantage point over the pond was more preferable because they were busy building a new one out of mud and moss. Now that's my kind of bird. They specialize in eating flying insects and prefer to nest near man-made structures and bodies of water. So in building the pond, I unintentionally created a more optimal home for them. While the pair built, spring rains brought sustenance to life that had been seeded months prior, flowers bloomed, and all of this beckoned more wildlife to return. This green frog was eager to bask, collecting warmth after months under ice. All the while, the deer sought refuge under nearby trees in the brush. The fish overwintered well too. They were becoming more active at the water's surface and begging for food. I couldn't feed them yet though. The temperatures weren't consistently warm yet, and during the colder seasons, goldfish can't digest food. Algae in ponds is inevitable, and new ponds often get a lot of it. String algae had formed everywhere, especially in the waterfalls. It's fairly easy to remove, but why did it happen in the first place? The most significant variable at play is usually excess nutrients introduced during the construction process. In this case, all that mud. As you can see here, the algae is even harboring a lot of it. Unfortunately, whenever we built this, a lot of dirt was introduced, and I also haven't had a chance to reseed this hillside and finish it all up, so every time it rains, mud just gets sent right into the pond, so a lot of excess nutrients plus the sun equals algae. That's also why the water is so cloudy. It had been fairly clear at the beginning of the season, but non-stop rains were continually sending muddy water straight into the pond. All of this meant that some spring cleaning was required. I shut off the pumps to better access the algae with a pressure washer. I don't know about you, but seeing it fall away like this is just so satisfying. It takes a while for the water to make its way back up to the wetlands, but once it does, the flow washes the debris downstream effortlessly. I then used a net to get what I could at the bottom of the falls, while the remainder had to be skimmed from the basin. All of this concluded in a slight water change, and thus you have my spring maintenance. This work, combined with rain and warmer weather, must have set the mood because everything changed that very evening. As night descended upon the waters and surrounding landscape, a new sound filled the airwaves. It was very loud, and something I was all too familiar with. Wetlands all across eastern North America harbor the little creatures making this tune. That would be none other than the spring peepers. Unlike many of the other species that prefer the warmer days to come, peepers are mostly active during the cooler transition in early spring. These chorus frogs can stick and climb to things, so you often find them in reeds and other plants in proximity to bodies of water. This was just the first wave of them, so only a few males were present on this evening. Although I removed some algae the day before, this wasn't a proper solution. If I had any hope of dialing things in, I'd have to do something about the runoff, especially on the right side. For now, I plan to simply add some grass to bind the soil. After manually raking the rocks and breaking up the top, I spread the seed. Long term, I intend to do something different, but I needed an immediate solution at that time. Just as I finished blanketing the seed, the peepers reemerged and began singing their song once more. Only this time, it sounded like there were a few more in the chorus. Now when I say these are small, it's not an exaggeration. Here's a full-grown male which is right around 1 inch long. It's truly astounding that their sound can be heard from up to 2 miles away. Meanwhile, things in the water feature were really shaking up. I noticed a completely different species which is very special to me, American toads. Truth be told, they're probably the single species that truly sparked my interest in animals. They were everywhere and making good use of the entire water feature. Some in the waterfalls, a few in the basin, and elsewhere. Much like the peepers, the males typically arrive first as they call out to attract potential mates. This symphony continued well into the evening and would for many more. In the following days, I observed the phoebe spending more time at the nest, but they weren't building. Instead, they were taking turns incubating a clutch of eggs. Unbeknownst to them, the tides would soon turn for the worse. That wouldn't happen for a few weeks, though. Although life was already unfolding so early in the season, this doesn't even scratch the surface of what would unfold in the following months. Also, I hardly did any work, and there was a lot to do, both with completing the initial phase of the build and adding new features to take this all to the next level. Till now, all I did was some maintenance and plant grass. Simply put, this was just getting started in every sense of the phrase, and I cannot wait to share with you what happened after. That will have to wait till the next episode though. See you then, Serpa Squad.